Okay, so we've been talking about slope for a while now, and next we're going to move on to what we call the unit rate. What's different about unit rate is unit rate takes the slope that we've been doing with just numbers and graphs and puts it in more of a real-world situation. So now we're going to start seeing things like miles per gallon and cost per pound and meters per second and all these different things that are going to relate to what's happening in a situation. The good news about it is that it's very, very similar to slope and almost identical when it comes to finding it. So what I have here to start off is I have a table where we have miles and gallons, and it says, I can go 15 gallons will get me 450 miles, 10 gallons, 300, 260. So I want to find, for unit rate, I want to know what is per unit. So I want to know how many miles can I go in 1 gallon. That's going to be my unit rate, right? How many miles in 1 gallon? That's what I'm asking myself when I'm looking for unit rate. So what I'm going to do to start finding this is I'm going to do delta y over delta x, just like I've normally done. So from 450 to 300 is 150. From 300 to 60 is 140. Okay, 240. Not 140, sorry guys. Okay, then I'm coming over here on this side and I want to know from 15 to 10 is 5, from 10 to 2 is 8. So now when I'm coming up, I want to find delta y over delta x, just like I've done before. Delta y over delta x, I have two different ones, so I'll test them both. First one, I'm doing 150 over 5, and if I do that, 150 divided by 5 gives me 30. If I test the second one out, I do 240 divided by 8. 240 divided by 8 is also 30. What this tells me, so since I divided that, 240 divided by 8, that tells me that my unit rate is 30, and I can say miles per gallon. Since I've divided that, that's what gives me the unit, because that tells me that I can go 30 miles in 1 gallon. And that's where this ratio kind of represents this relationship right here. Okay, so that's if we have a table. Find delta y over delta x, and then once you have that ratio, divide delta y divided by delta x, or the top number divided by the bottom number, and that's going to give us our unit rate. Now, what if we have not a table, but what if we have a graph? Okay, what if I have that and I want to look at finding it the same thing? So here I have a graph with cost in kilometers. Now, remember I said on the last slide a second ago that slope is pretty much identical to the unit rate when it comes to finding it. The meaning behind it is a little bit different though. Slope tells us how steep a line is, where the unit rate tells us the rate that it's happening per individual unit. So if I'm looking here, I'm going to find slope like I normally would. I'm going to start here and I'm going to see what's my rise and what's my run. Now I look over here, my rise, I went up by 1 and I went over by 2. So if I'm looking at my rise over run, that would be 1/2. Now this would be my slope. This would be m, right? Because that's in our fraction form, and that's going to show us, it can be a decimal, I could say it's 0.5, but more accurately, if we leave it as a fraction, that shows us our rise over our run, which is more helpful in a graphing situation. Now, to turn that into a unit rate, okay, because this right now tells me I go I increase by, let's say, $1 for every 2 kilometers. Right? Well, a unit rate, I want to know, remember before I wanted the miles for 1 gallon, I want to know how many dollars, right? How many dollars, we're running out of space, for 1 kilometer. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I can do that by dividing. Just like we did delta y divided by delta x, I'm just going to do my rise divided by my run. And I'm going to turn this fraction into a decimal. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 2, and that's going to give me 0.5. So what this tells me is that the cost is going to be $0.50, right? $0.50 or 50 cents per kilometer. So I could write that, and sorry I'm running out of room here, I could write that as 50 cents per kilometer, right? Because it cost me 50 cents per 1 kilometer. So the key things to get out of unit rate here is it's very identical, or very close to being identical to slope. Finding it is the exact same way. The only difference is our unit rate goes towards application problems. And also, our unit rate, we want to know how much it is per 1 unit. That's a big part of unit rate. So per 1 kilometer, for 1 gallon. Okay, and that's our unit rate.